Ron Vandervelde.
Somebody stays in.
It's kind of nice to be back down here and see so many familiar faces. I've never spoken publicly about this topic. Never have. It's always been a private passion, a very private passion. Going way back about 1 million years ago when I was a kid, I was riding on the back of an ancient old tractor. And I'll never forget watching those old brown furrows curling over as we were going. And all of a sudden, out flipped an arrowhead right on top of the furrow. And I was fascinated by it. So I went back to that very same area that night. My brother and I went back with shovels and buckets. We were going to get buckets full of arrowheads. And we started digging, and we dug until we had a pit where we had to take buckets of dirt outside of the pit, thinking we were going to come into this plethora of arrowheads. As the day waned, so did our energies, and very disheartedly heading back home through the plowed field. And here I found one laying just on the surface of the plowed field. And when something like that happens, early in life, for some people it turns into a passion. Some would say an obsession. And since that time, I have been privileged to hike hundreds. What is history? And for those of us that have become obsessed with these wonderful things like this, this is a tangible link. History doesn't get any more important than when you are the first person to pick up something. Now this one's about 2,500 years old. Okay, the last person that touched that, who was that person? What kind of a culture? What kind of environment? What did northeastern Wisconsin look like? And to me, that is history at its finest. It's far beyond arrowheads. It's artifacts. Oh, by the way, the bow and arrow. These I've got over 1,300. I didn't bring them all. Most of the time, we think of in terms of arrowheads, large things like this. They're not. The bow and arrow wasn't invented until about 500 AD. So all these wonderful things we call arrowheads are not. They're spear points. And they were launched with an atlatl. Isn't that a beautiful word? I love that word, atlatl. Which is kind of an extended elbow for launching these spears. Well, you had to. You couldn't possibly shoot that thing. It's so darn heavy. When the bow and arrow got invented, then we ended up with true arrowheads. These tiny little things, just like you found by the Kaukauna River. Beautiful little things like this. I'll pass all this stuff around. You're more than welcome to take a look at them. The artifacts goes far beyond. We're talking about a whole culture. We're talking about bits and pieces of evidence of who they were and how they lived. And when I was living in Kaukauna, it just amazed me how much of this stuff is there, very subtly, and it's something that you have to seek out. Benny Hirsch's farm. Ben was a very good friend through this venture. I was telling Craig, as soon as I got here, I was going through arrowhead withdrawal, so I started looking for plowed fields, and I found that one up on Double Z. So I snuck out into the field, and I was having a ball, and all of a sudden this guy comes walking across the field, and I thought, oh, geez. I didn't have permission. It turned out to be Ben, and his only requirement was that I could go there as much as I wanted, but I had to show him. Every time I was done, I had to show him everything I found. And we shared a lot of good times. This is from Ben's field. Beautiful, beautiful hammerstone. You can just pass those all around. Somehow to touch things. You know, display cases are fine and dandy, but it doesn't put you in connection. You know, when you see a tool like this, we're going back to another lifestyle we can only imagine. You can just pass them all around. Hammerstone. This is still very sharp. This is a celt. Probably about 5,000-6,000 years old. Beautiful celt. This is a nutting stone. Where acorns and hickory nuts and things like that were ground, and over the course of of years, you get depressions in it. There's an ancient hole. Here's a funeral item. Pieces of pottery. It sounds like some people are very brilliant about pottery and how to make pots. Pottery wasn't invented until 500 BC. 500 BC. And I've got many trays of pottery, and the museum in Green Bay took an interest in a few kinds because they hadn't been recorded in Wisconsin before. But pottery plays a key role. Here's a hammer stone. You can see it all in workings. Very subtle things that some people would not take as being an artifact. Where do you find all this stuff? Farm fields, obviously. On the way here today, I left the North Country early so I could go prowl around all the old fields that I used to prowl around when I lived here. And either they have somebody's magnificent patio over the top of them right now, or fields are not in corn. The time of the year is perfect for looking for artifacts, perfect. Ma Nature gives us water, and water erodes. And there are times where you will find an artifact, and it'll be sitting on a little pedestal from the erosion of all winter long. So now is the perfect time if a person finds those kinds of locations. Creek beds, river beds. The Fox River is just walking in the river. I used to walk the edge of the river, and you'll find a variety of artifacts. There's several ways of finding artifacts. One involves excavation kinds of things. And where I live now, I live in northern Marinette County, and again, waterways. We have significant the Pike River, the Menominee River, and it's my quest to find some archaeological sites. By the way, if I do, I will leave them immediately and turn them over to the State Historical Society. There's two ways of going. It's called stratigraphy. Everything that happened over the course of a period of time is deposited, and as a result, if you can unearth them in those layers, oh my goodness, there's so much to be learned. The flip side to that is like the shores of Green Bay, and that's where most of these came from, where the churning action of the water has destroyed all that stratigraphy. And as a result, and plowing is another one. Plowing just disturbs all of that. So there really is no historical context to it. With this approach, this is where you get all the incredible information about our past by finding them in situ, in the very location where they were deposited or lost. And if I do come across, I would stop immediately. I don't know if you recall, way back when we did some archaeological surveys. The old sanatorium, Riverview. Before they demolished it and were going to convert it, Carl Johnson and I took kids, and over the course of a couple of days, we did a survey like this, just to make sure that before it was developed into a residential area, that we weren't destroying some of that incredible stratigraphy. We did find, going back to 3000 BC, some artifacts there, but again, they were all in a turmoil, and there was no stratigraphy with Riverview. But that's one way, and again, the ethics of what we're doing here is Craig and I have been chatting about that. Historically, Kaukauna had burial grounds. If you've studied